This video contains flashing lights, disturbing content, violent and graphic images, jump scares, pop-ups and sudden loud noises. Viewer discretion advised. The Suffering.
There's nothing scarier than a haunted house, except for maybe a haunted prison. A prison in which very gruesome manners of the death penalty were administered. Such is the setting of The Suffering, which puts an action spin on traditional survival horror, so you probably spend more time shooting at demons than solving puzzles, which is good. This is another game that really works on you psychologically and gives you a number of moral tests which determine whether you are an innocent man or a cold-blooded murderer.
The Thing.
This game acts as a sequel to the 1982 film of the same name. An alien that can imitate other life forms has taken up residence in an Antarctic base, and the player's team is sent to investigate. Since the alien can imitate any life form, the horror comes from not ever knowing if one of the player's teammates is actually the alien.
Eternal Darkness.
Brilliance of Eternal Darkness wasn't in the storyline though. It was the way that the game played with the player's head. Every creature the player encountered drained sanity from the player. As their sanity decreased, the game's sound effects and music were gradually replaced by sinister voices, whispering. Illusionary characters and rooms appeared on the screen, and sometimes it seemed as if the game crashed, or entire inventory had disappeared. It was extremely effective, and very, very creepy.
(1916) Baron Beckham's Cream.
This game is an indie game, set in trenches of Germany, so everything that is found in this game contains letters that are from Germany. The actual art style of the game is great, giving the dark, grisly black and white setting in the post-war environment. This game is set like a maze, where the player must navigate through all the while avoiding mechanized dinosaurs, who will chase the player down frantically. While there are weaponry and flares in the game, however, these don't provide much use to these enemies. It's always best to steer away from them rather than fighting them.
Among the Sleep.
Nothing can get scarier than witnessing horror from a toddler's perspective. Among the Sleep, an upcoming indie horror title, puts you in the role of a 2-year-old and presents a never-before-seen survival horror experience. The game's scare levels is similar to games like Slender or Amnesia, but it's more frightening because it presents horror through the eyes of a helpless toddler whose only way to tackle it is to either run away or hide behind an object to avoid getting spotted by sinister enemies. The game focuses on object interaction, which will help a toddler escape. You don't have any access to weapons, so there's a total survival horror game present.
SCP-087-B.
SCP-087-B is a slightly odd-generated experiment in horror that will either have you jumping out of your seats or yawning dismissively. It really depends on you. SCP-087-B is a game set in randomly generated dark hallways with staircases, and something is lurking downstairs below you. And the only way you can go is deeper into the darkness. When you descend, each level is marked by a numbered plaque on the wall. Maybe it's the slow pace of the character, lack of music, and claustrophobic environment that makes this game unnerving.
Doom 3.
Wandering the seemingly abandoned Martian space station gives many players the creeps. Sure, you can guess when something bad's about to happen, and you'll be right most of the time. But that doesn't mean you won't think twice before entering every room. The music is virtually non-existent and relies on the dark ambient breathing found in every room. The monsters attack the player from dark corners, and there are some great moments that you want to witness again and again. Every sound, every noise in this game will put you on edge. Doom 3 works the horror angle in a number of different ways, and is pretty damn effective overall.
Aliens vs. Predator 2.
The video game extension of two of the most famous science fiction movie franchises ever made offered players a choice of free gaming experiences. Playing as a Marine was a completely different story, To stand any chance of survival, they were forced to embrace knife-edge tension while listening out for any scuttling, clanks, and scratching down the game's many dark corridors. The beeping noise of the motion tracker could ratchet up the tension and increase the player's heartbeat in seconds.
White Day, a labyrinth-named school.
This game is one of the scariest games to ever exist. The developers actually had to release patches for the game to make it less scary, and put the more terrifying scares into the locked higher difficulties because people couldn't bring themselves to finish the game due to pure terror. Though its graphics aren't the best, that does not deter from its fantastic atmosphere and gameplay mechanics. The game allowed you to turn off lights to hide from unsuspecting enemies, while you were also avoiding ghosts and spirits. This game is for gamers who can take the outdated graphics, but want a fantastic atmosphere and can handle some puzzle solving, running, and hiding for your life against forces that you simply cannot beat. There's only one problem with this game. You technically need to simulate a Korean PC to play it, as it was only released there. However, there is a project called Unnamed GS that is working to restore this game, and is actually, I think, almost done. Translations and updating it so you do not need a Korean PC. I've used his releases several times, played the game. I can't bring myself to beat it quite yet. It's absolutely terrifying and I can only take it in small chunks. Definitely worth checking out for any horror fan looking for a fresh scare.
Call of Cthulhu.
You'll be taking on the role of Private Detective Jack Walters, who has been given a job to find a missing person in the shadowy town of Innsmouth. An investigation that soon turns into an encounter with evil cultists, sea monsters, and several ancient horrors. The game's unusually bare interface helps to enhance its psychological horror elements. Your character's history of mental problems also helps blur the line between reality and fevered dream. Much like in Eternal Darkness and later games, you need to maintain your hero's sanity. Expose him to too much horror and he'll start to hallucinate, suffer from schizophrenia, and maybe even kill himself. Not only does this game feature terrifying creatures and atmosphere, as stated, it also lacks a heads-up display, meaning the player has no visual cues for things such as health, radar, and ammo. This surprisingly simple mechanic goes a long way in making players feel hopeless in an isolated, unforgiving, and dark world. It truly brings H.P. Lovecraft's novel and stories and ideals to life.
Dead Space series.
Dead Space is a masterclass in sustained terror. Nearly every single aspect in E3's hi-fi horror epic is engineered towards plunging the player into a sea of never-ending tension and leaving them there. The Wii version is an FPS on-the-rails shooter, and much of the jump scares and horror-induced fun from the original are seen here too. It can be said that the Dead Space's fright techniques have been copied from every single sci-fi horror film ever made. That doesn't stop the end result from being a glorious whole in its own right. The game's strongest scare factor is the enemy's necromorph, ability to jump at you from absolutely anywhere, be it above, below, or behind you.
Condemned criminal origins.
Condemned follows the exploits of FBI agent Ethan Thomas on the trail of a serial killer. Unbeknown to Thomas, he's actually hunting down a source of pure, unfiltered evil. Thomas's experience away from the safety of the Bureau seems filled with unfocused malevolence, from the attacks from gangs of psychotic homeless people to the atmospheric crime scenes. The Condemned features brutal, hand-to-hand combat, CSI crime investigations making the entire game genuinely unsettling. Factor in some tense exploration of dark and dreary abandoned buildings, and altogether you have a really disturbing experience. Condemned 2 took much more than an action-packed view to the game, removing the scare factor found in the first installment.
Fear series.
The game's title says it all. Monolith's Fear series is considered by many as a modern-day horror first-person shooter. Why? Well, you'll certainly know why once you've played it. Players are thrown into a fast-paced FPS environment where supernatural elements, intense gunfights, and jump out of your seat moments arise. The clever use of lighting, sound, and shadows will leave players' minds and hearts racing and thinking things are there when really they aren't. The game demands players to always remain alert, for who knows what is lurking around the next corner. While some may argue that the later Fear games somehow got less scary, the Perseus Mandate and Extraction Point really claimed the fame in terms of scariness and absolutely tension-filling and terrifying moments.
SCP Containment Breach.
SCP Containment Breach is an indie game that somehow manages to be scarier than most recent big-budget horror games all combined. The game casts players as an unnamed character, a worker of the SCP Foundation, possibly a scientist, trapped inside a facility operated by the shadowy figures of the SCP Foundation. Much like Weeping Angels in Doctor Who and Slender Man myth, the enemies will pursue you only when you're not looking at them, or when you blink. That's right, this game has an eye meter, which counts down the seconds between blinks. Leave it too long and you'll shut your eyes momentarily, allowing you to be pounced on and have your neck snapped from behind.
Resident Evil series.
While Resident Evil can't quite lay claim to being the first survival horror video game, it created the most effective horror experience of its day. By restricting view, players were left feeling completely vulnerable against the unholy beasts that were set against them. You can't say you didn't bolt from your chair when you saw those zombie dogs come crashing through the window of the police department. A scarcity of ammo only added to the tension you felt when surrounded by legions of the undead. Resident Evil 5 and 6 seemed to go away from the whole horror perspective and lean more on action and quick-time events, which led to many of the fans being quite outraged.
Siren series.
Siren is all about delivering a true-to-life feel of terror, which it does frighteningly well. It invented the sight jacket mode, which allows players to see through the eyes of the monsters, and is often used in clever ways to solve puzzles and sneak past enemies. Much like any horror game, Siren also utilizes lighting and shadows to great effect, but it's the haunting groans and wails that will stick with gamers the longest and ensure that the lights stay on every night after playing. Siren is a survival horror game where you, as a gamer, truly feel the need to survive.
Silent Hill series.
The Silent Hill games are undeniable classics in the survival horror genre. Like many of the titles on this list, Silent Hill has borrowed a lot of horror movie techniques, including angled camera shots, ominous sound effects, and shuffling, spasmodic movements, to highlight the otherworldliness of the game's horrific creatures. No other series does creepy, twisted, blood-soaked horror better than Silent Hill. These games aren't stereotypical screamers. Instead, they rely on horrific images and things that work on the players mentally, until they are so scared, they're afraid to turn out the lights.
Fatal Frame series.
Fatal Frame gives the player a special camera rather than a gun, which is to use to dispatch the ghosts that haunt these games. Which is a nice change of pace from most horror games. The games tell of an ancient Japanese rituals and the legends that have a storytelling style similar to recent films like The Ring and The Grudge. The Fatal Frame games are well put together and wonderfully horrifying, even if the nightmares stay with you for weeks on end.
Ju-on, The Grudge.
Advertised as a horror house simulator, Ju-on takes a unique approach to the horror genre. You won't find any guns, bats, chainsaws, etc., or anything of the like. just equipped with a flashlight as you attempt to flee a haunted local. Ju-on doesn't attempt to tell a story, it simply wants to scare you, and then scare you again. And to that extent, the game is certainly effective, with no shortage of startling images and noises. The game uses lighting very effectively, as the flashlight can only illuminate so much of the screen. The flashlight also adds an element of suspense. If you run out of batteries, it's game over. The game also tracks on how well you cope with jump scares and such by giving you your overall result at the end of each stage. The game is based off the film The Grudge and Ju-on's series of Japanese horror movies.
Slender.
This is it. The infamous Slender. It is a free indie horror game which has no weapons and no combat. It is based off of the Slender Man myth. The goal of the game is to find the 8 pages scattered about the woods relating to the Slender Man. At any time he may appear, but with the more pages you pick up, the quicker Slender Man will hunt you down. It's a simple premise, but one that rapidly becomes increasingly intense and scary, and the fact that the Slender Man himself is so damn creepy, tall, thin, no face and tentacles, makes it even worse. The dim lighting and muted color palette tend to play tricks on your eyes until it seems like anything could be him. What's worse is that the music and ambience get progressively more and more intense, dark, and sinister every time you collect a new page. On an added note, you all should check out my Let's Play of that game if you haven't already. It recently broke the 100,000 view count, and it's quite a fun time. There's an annotation link in the corner for you all to enjoy.
Penumbra series.
In the game, the player traverses some truly dark, disgusting environments. The atmosphere is so doom and dread, it's almost real. Progress reports, diaries, letters and wreckage all detail the downfall and insanity of the area. You will hear some odd sounds as you explore the complexes, and a lot of the sounds really mean something. There are monsters in the game, so this is not Half-Life or Doom 3. Games like that are good, but you always feel a bit safer when holding some serious firepower. Here you have to use your environment to save yourself. Perhaps you can quickly pile up some crates in front of a door to keep something evil at bay, or trap an enemy in a room by shutting the door. While you can hit monsters by swinging tools at them, it really isn't the best solution. Using new techniques, the Penumbra series pulls you into its dark web very effectively and will scare the hell out of you.
Amnesia series.
Amnesia is designed to frighten you from the straight outset, not just with wobbly camera work, but with some remarkably ghoulish enemies. There are no weapons at all. Amnesia sets the player on edge, so if you see something bad, you don't try and fight. You run. Each room, corridor, or chamber contains only a few sources of light. Most of them aren't illuminated. There's tinder boxes around, but not an enormous amount. You have a lamp, but the oil burns quickly, and is extremely scarce. In other words, light is a resource to be managed throughout. Without it, you will go slowly insane in the darkness. Hiding from an enemy is one of those moments where you truly feel like holding your breath, and your hands start sweating for fear that a single noise will give you away. There may have been follow-ups to the original Dark Descent, such as White Knight, but for now, the awful biting and crunching sound that seems to follow you oftentimes seems to be sticking with many players even after they've played, making this, the original Dark Descent, to be one of the scariest games on this list.